So I'm sure a lot of y'all have played Grand Theft Auto, and you know when you're playing, it's a third-person video game, right? So you see the character that you're controlling, you're outside of his body. Something that I've realized is very effective for me is when I'm in a high-pressure situation. So maybe I'm at the grocery store and I see a smoking hot girl walking down the cereal aisle, or I'm about to confront someone or go in and ask my boss for a raise, and you get that like fight or flight response where a lot of times you freeze up and decide to flee, right? To do nothing. Instead, what I do in these situations is I imagine that my consciousness is being sucked outside of my body, and now I'm looking at myself like I'm controlling myself in Grand Theft Auto. And now my mindset shifts and I'm like, okay, if I was controlling myself in a video game, what would I do? Well, if the girl's over there, I'm gonna push up on that left thumbstick to walk towards the girl. I'm not gonna think about it or be too scared to do that, and immediately I'll start walking forward. I know this sounds kind of strange and funny, but effectively it removes all of the emotion and fear from the situation, and now it's like you're observing yourself taking action rather than getting caught up in whether you should do it or not. It's like, no, I'm gonna do it because that's what a badass GTA character would do in this situation. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that you should go around and start carjacking people in the streets, but next time you find yourself in one of these really high pressure situations and you're about to freeze up, instead enter GTA mode. Imagine yourself being sucked outside of your body and holding that controller. And now, just do what you know you should do. If you've been following my channel for a while, then you know that every once in a while I'll do a freestyle rap with the homie Dave or Donnie Matt. And I know on the surface it just seems like a goofy, funny thing to do, and it is. I also know a lot of you guys might think it's cringy, but check it out. There's a deeper purpose to this. Like, I'm the type of person that when I used to be with a girl who I found attractive, like, I shut down, right? I didn't want to say something stupid, so I'd censor myself and I'd say all these really basic robotic things like, oh, how was your weekend? How many brothers and sisters do you have? Like, you get stuck in this boring interview mode and you're just not able to flirt, right? I know it can seem strange, but freestyle rap is one of the main ways that I broke through this, because when you challenge yourself to freestyle, no longer can you think and calculate everything you need to say to make sure you don't say something dumb. You have to start trusting yourself just to flow, to let your tongue flow and just say the first thing that comes to your mind and be confident saying that thing. And that is not an easy skill, especially if you're like me. Like, when I first tried to freestyle, it was something that made me so uncomfortable, even if I was doing it all by myself at home. And even after I started getting a little bit more comfortable doing it by myself, now the thought of doing it with a close friend who I could be goofy with normally, even that made me feel self-conscious about what I was saying. It made me just feel so awkward. And because it made me uncomfortable, I knew it was something that would help me grow. So I pushed myself to do it with friends, and we'd do these goofy freestyles together. Eventually, I got comfortable enough to try it on YouTube, even though I always get roasted in the comments. And I know I'm not like a great freestyler, but again, if the thought of freestyling makes you feel uncomfortable, or you watch me freestyle and you think it's cringy, then you're probably somebody who censors yourself and feels uncomfortable talking to girls or to your superiors at work. And freestyling is a skill that you absolutely should adopt, because I promise you, man, as you level up in freestyling, you're also going to start to feel so much more comfortable and natural being yourself in these type of situations. As we were just filming that edit on the dirt bike, we're on this like empty country road, right? And like every 5 minutes a car would come by. So when Julie and her sister were driving next to me, we were using both lanes of the road, but we made sure we looked one way, looked the other way, no cars were coming. Now, on one of the last takes, this truck sped up behind us. He must have been going 60 miles an hour on like a 30-mile-per-hour road, and he almost ran us off the road. I didn't realize because the dirt bike's so loud, but I pulled over and looked over because I thought, maybe something's wrong with my dirt bike. He's trying to let me know. And he rolled down his window, throwing up middle fingers, dropping F-bombs, just screaming at us, insulting us. Why are you on the wrong side of the road? You guys are so dumb. What are you doing? Etc., etc. And when things like this happen in life and someone, confronts you or insults you, a lot of times is kind of intimidating, right? And I think a lot of times when another guy does this to you, your initial instinct is to try and out alpha him, right? And insult him and make him feel bad about himself. But the problem with doing this is that there's no winning these types of arguments. It just turns into a screaming match and you both just get really worked up and angry, or sometimes you don't think of a good insult to say and then you're sitting there like like fuming, and it makes you look kind of weak. So I'm gonna tell you what you should do every time instead of that. Now, this is really pretty simple. The first step is to take a very deep breath to calm yourself while holding really strong eye contact. And this accomplishes two things. First of all, it keeps you calm and collected. And second of all, it's gonna mess with the other guy, because people who go around doing this and trying to insult you and start confrontations, they tend to be weak people who feel out of control of their lives, and their way of feeling powerful is by insulting other people. So when you sit there and just calmly look at them, they're not getting the reaction they want out of you, and they're gonna start to feel intimidated, like, oh crap, maybe I messed with the wrong guy. Now, after you've taken that deep breath and waited, 2 or 3 seconds, you just want to dismiss this person. Like, they're not even worth your time. It doesn't matter how bad they insulted you, you are above that. And the best way to dismiss people is just to look at them and say, well, hope that made you feel better about yourself. This shows them that they did not get under your skin. You don't really care about what they said. And then honestly, you don't even have time to deal with them, and you're just gonna keep moving on with your day. So with the guy in the truck right now, that's what I did. I put up the visor, looked at him for a second, and then I just waved him on and said, all right, man, I hope that made you feel better about yourself. And he looked at me furious and drove away. And you can use this same approach if you're in a bar and someone shoulders you and tells you, get out of my way, loser. Hope that made you feel better about yourself, man. Turn and keep talking to your friends. You can use this for one of those family members or friends of a friend who's always insulting you, because it's gonna get to them, right? Like, the best part is, after that happened, I didn't have any anxiety. I wasn't walking around thinking about how I should have beat him up like I used to do in the past. I moved on with my day completely happy, while he went home furious, knowing that he definitely did not get under my skin and he had no power over me whatsoever. Now, another social situation that can really test your confidence, and this is one that used to mess with me big time, is when you're talking or telling a story and somebody cuts you off and interrupts you. And I've learned that you kind of have to separate these situations into 2 different categories. The first category is when the conversation just naturally takes a different direction. So maybe I'm telling a story, I pulled into the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, got out of my car, and then someone else says, oh my God, did I tell you guys last week I was at Dunkin' Donuts and there was a dead body in the parking lot? And then someone else says, wait, why was there a dead body there? These people were not trying to disrespect me. They just naturally had comments that came to mind, and so they said them, and now the current of the conversation changed from this way to this way. And in the past, I used to fight against that current and try and bring it back to my story. I'd say, yeah, but when I was at Dunkin' Donuts, and then people would obviously, cut me off and interrupt me again and keep pushing the conversation in that new direction, and I would get butthurt. So eventually I realized that I had to make a rule for myself. If I'm telling a story and someone interrupts it, I will no longer try and bring my story back up unless somebody asks me about it directly. Now, this accomplishes 2 things. First of all, when you don't try and bring it up, usually someone is curious and they ask you, David, what happened to Dunkin' Donuts? And then you can tell it again. But also it allows me to stay active and present in the conversation, and I can keep contributing to the new direction of the conversation without feeling butthurt. Now, the second scenario is when there is malicious intent, and maybe someone's just being clearly disrespectful, or maybe someone's self-centered and they're not very self-aware. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what their motivation is. You eventually have to call them out, or they're just going to keep cutting you off. But what you have to realize is, generally when someone's cutting you off a lot, they're probably cutting off other people in the group too. So the way to skillfully deal with this is, after they've cut you off a few times, now wait for them to cut someone else off, and that's your opportunity. Calmly say, hey man, you got to stop cutting people off. It's kind of rude. And then turn back to whoever was talking and say, well, what were you saying, Peter? When you do it like this, it's going to force the person to check themselves, and they're going to feel really insecure about what they were doing. The key, though, is you want to be calm. You want to take a deep breath before you open your mouth, because otherwise you risk coming off as passive-aggressive and butthurt and being like, bro, you got to stop cutting people off. What are you doing, man? And then it's going to turn into a confrontation, which is, that's not what you want. You're trying to put them in their place and keep the conversation going. Now, obviously, if they're literally only cutting you off and they're not doing it to other people, you still need to stand up for yourself and say, hey man, you got to stop cutting me off. That's kind of rude. Anyway, what I was saying was, when you do it this way, you might come off as a little butthurt, but like, you have to set that boundary. So I think when we're younger that all of us are very heavily influenced by social pressure. Like I remember back in middle school or grade school, all my friends decided to quit playing soccer because it was no longer cool. So I also decided to stop playing. Even though I enjoyed playing, I was good at it. My dad was coaching my teams. It was a way me and him bonded. Like he played pro soccer back in Spain back in the day. And to this day, that's one of my bigger regrets in life because it was not a decision I made for myself. It was a decision I made to like keep conforming to social standards. And I think the unfortunate truth is that most guys, they follow this trend even in their 20s and 30s, and they keep making decisions based on how they think other people are going to perceive their life rather than based on what they actually want to pursue. Like I remember when I quit my job as a software engineer and became a personal trainer and then started getting into YouTube, like I got a lot of kind of backhanded comments from friends and family, and it wasn't that they were trying to be mean or they weren't trying to support